notes on the final submission. So yeah, please stay tuned for that. Okay. Okay. So last week we talked about your sort of like final corrections for your site selection process. And then overall, we talked about mostly the physical aspects of site planning and urban planning. So now we'll talk more about the socioeconomic factors. We touched on it a bit with the office design, with like how do you determine the number of offices, how big should the offices be, and how you can use demographics to sort of uh, use demographics to like find out how much space you need. Now, a similar process can be applied to the national, regional, and provincial level. So first, we'll break down what is governance in urban planning, and then how can demographics and other socioeconomic factors can be useful for you as like designers, not just like when you become professional architects or maybe if you go into urban design, but also right now as a student focusing on site planning and architectural development. Anyway, so as always, our first step is to identify the stakeholders. So we're thinking about national and regional levels. So number one, we need to familiarize ourselves with the geography and the situation of the Philippines. So sort of a refresher from your social studies class. So the Philippines is made up of 7,000 islands, stretching from about 1,800 kilometers from north to south. So about 1,000 of the islands are inhabited, and less than one half of the 1,000 are larger than 2.5 square kilometers. So they're small islands. So development-wise, that limits urbanization. But even though we're like several small islands, the Philippines is still considered one of the most urbanized developing countries in Asia. About half the population is currently living in urban areas, a figure that has been like slowly changing since the 1990s. So currently, we're above 50% urbanization rate, where there are like in general the whole Philippines. And one of the key issues at the national level is really the poverty gap. There's a large disparity between rich and poor, thereby making poverty reduction one of the most pressing tasks of the country. So I'm sure you're familiar with this, like from your high school days. It's still a big issue even until today. So if you want a bigger map of this, there's a link down here. I'll share the PowerPoint with you anyway. So I'll just show a big version of the map over here. So we have about 17 regions. So wait, is it 17 regions? I need to double check. Hang on. Okay, 17 regions, yes. So each of these regions have their own issues and sort of what do you call this, strengths and weaknesses. For me, I will focus more on Cebu for this lecture because this is where my focus is. But if you live in other regions, you can find, for the most part, information online. But this discussion will be mainly focused on Cebu and the processes and how we determine those issues. But going back again to the national scale, one of the sort of key problems in the Philippines is poverty. You can find information on the Philippine Statistics Authority webpage. This is a quick infographic of the poverty statistics in the Philippines. So you see here on the, I think, left side of my screen, you see the least poor countries. That's to the north and a bit to the south. That's the NCR region, going up to like Ilocos del Norte, all the way down to Palawan and some parts of Kanang, Capiz, Iloilo, and Guimaras. Other sort of least poor areas are Davao del Sur, areas around sort of the Davao city area. And then some places like Misamis Oriental, you have Basilan, etc. And everywhere else is kind of like sort of middle range. And the poorest sort of key areas are Agusan del Sur, Davao Occidental, and Zamboanga del Norte, and like Zamboanga, Cebu. So these areas are sort of, if you are near these areas, you might be experiencing some of the lowest sort of income, and basically that area, according to the PSA, has the most problem with poverty. So So how does the PSA or the Philippine government define poor? So they are individuals and families whose income fall below the poverty threshold as defined by NEDA and or cannot afford a sustained manner to provide minimum basic needs of food, health, education, housing, and other essential amenities of life. So the big problem for me with this definition is that when I try to search for basic needs, how does the NEDA or the PSA define basic needs? It's not written there. So it's a very arbitrary, sort of not specific definition. But going by the numbers on the screen right now, we see that poverty incidence affects, by their definition of poverty incidence, there's over 20 million poor Filipinos and about 3.5 million poor Filipino families. So that's like population, and then it's just like kind of relating to household. And then subsistence incidents, so about 6.55 food poor Filipinos, meaning they can't, what they call this, they don't have access to basic food, whatever basic food is. So if you see here, the definition of subsistence incidence is that the proportion of families or individuals with per capita income less than per capita food threshold to the total number of families or individuals. Now, if that sounds confusing, it is because they're trying to go with this at a very sort of technical definition. And I feel like they're doing that to hide the actual situation. Like, how do you define what does what they call this? What does food poor mean? Like, how much food are we talking about here? It's never defined in this whole thing. So you have a definition here of food threshold. So it says the minimum income required for a family or individual to meet the basic food needs, which satisfy the nutritional requirements for economically necessary and socially desirable physical activities. So I was like, is it 3 meals a day? Is it like a certain number of meat, certain number of rice? It's not defined, and I've been like searching like crazy to find what this means. But overall, we can take it with a grain of salt that like food and income are one of the big factors that determine how poor the Philippines is. And unfortunately, at the national level, growth is always going up, but at the local level, to like these individual people and families, the distribution of wealth is not very fair or like equitable. So where is the money going? And I'll just like leave it to you to figure out where the money is going. But from an urban planning and sort of a site planning standpoint, what what we can do to help alleviate the poverty and food inequality in the Philippines is study how the government system works and where can architecture and urban planning fit into that government system. So as you all know, just quick recap, in the Philippines, we have the government in the Philippines is arranged as follows. So we have the national government, which handles like everything on the national level, divided into 17 regions. Those 17 regions are divided into provinces and HUCs, or highly urbanized cities. And then the provinces are divided into component cities or municipalities. So they have the difference between cities and municipalities, like population and economic activity. And both component cities and municipalities are divided into barangays. Now, how is sort of urban planning or like just planning in general done in at these different levels? So I remember I asked you guys what are the 4 levels of planning in the Philippines, and for some reason people just keep answering with the 4 steps of planning. So the 4 levels is this. This is what I mean. So there's national, regional, provincial, and then local or municipal. So at the national level, the government is sort of giving the general idea. They can't specify kind of a lot of details because they're looking at it from like a very overview type of position. The details comes from local or municipal planning. As of sort of earlier this year, I think, or maybe like was it last year, the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners actually suggested that there should be a metro level in between provincial and local to allow different municipalities and cities to work together to create a program for what we call a metropolitan framework. So a metropolitan area is like a combination of different cities. And what really defines it for me is like the size and the population of that area. So how big the land area is and how many people are living there. the PIEP, or the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners, basically the body of like urban planners in the Philippines, feel like there should be a metro level, sort of to help connect the gap between provincial and local. And of course, that connects to like how money is sort of or how the economic growth is distributed, because currently it's all here in the national level and only goes to select regions, most likely NRC, and the big regions in like Luzon, and maybe some in Mindanao, like Davao. In Luzon, it's the NCR, and in Visayas, it's Cebu. But on the local level, you can see still a lot of like inequalities and like poor housing quality and like lack of resources. So the proposal is that the metro level would help communications between provincial and local. Okay, so who are the government bodies that handle these kinds of sort of plans? So there are three types of plans at all levels. So there's the physical framework plan, the socioeconomic development plan, and the investment program. So each level should have their own sort of physical framework plan, socioeconomic development plan, and investment programs. And at several levels, you have, sorry, at the highest level, you have the NEDA, or the National Economic Development Authority. And they have several offices across each region. So, for example, like there's a region 1 NEDA, there's a region 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And then these sort of regional development councils over here, they handle, as the name suggests, development in that region. So they work together with NEDA. And what is the main function of NEDA? It's the coordination of activities. So sorry, I have to read here, such as the formulation of policies, plans, and programs to set broad parameters for national and subnational level. So the key word here is broad. They can't be specific because it's very what do you call this? Unrealistic to create policies just at the national level and try to enforce them like at the local level. The policies have to come from the local level. So there has to be a communication between the national and local government. Regional council is supposed to help with that, and also the provincial council and also the municipal council. So the main issue for me, based on what I observed, is that the communication from national to local is very kind of inconsistent. Mostly because there's so many different people, so many different offices, and sort of logistics is still not there yet. It's very kind of inconsistent. And then the other function of NEDA is to review, evaluate, and monitor infrastructure projects. So with the keyword here, infrastructure, we're not really kind of talking about architecture projects. So this is more of the engineering side and like large scale sort of road developments, highways, railways, etc. So where does architecture come in? So we're really here at the local level. So even at all the way down to the barangay level, because each building we design should help out or enhance the local community. We can't have one building to serve the whole province. It's impossible to create just one project made by one team of architects to serve a whole province. So we're down here at the local level. And why should we learn about urban and regional planning? Is because the national government has all the funds, and then they determine sort of what are the key objectives for like the country as a whole. And our job as architects and urban planners is sort of to align the development of our local communities and select sort of key objectives that fit to our needs. So I think everywhere food security is an issue. Like even here in Cebu City, we see all of our slum areas, and then that's where most of the unemployed, those who don't have one, also education. So that's the most vulnerable population. So architecture tries to solve this with like housing programs, designing new schools, etc. So similar, and I'm thinking about tackling food security from different angles. That's how architects and urban planners should contribute to, excuse me, that's how architects and urban planners can contribute to solving national level problems. Other identified objectives is environmental stability and ecological integrity, rational urban development, meaning like planning should make sense or should follow the kanang standards set forth by like both the municipal and provincial government. Spatial integration, equitable access to physical and natural resources, public-private partnership. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. People empowerment, so interviewing the stakeholders or like having the not the stakeholders as in the local community, the people in the barangay, the people affected by your sort of big projects at the local level. Recognition of rights of indigenous people. So this is for select regions where there are indigenous people living. And then also market orientation. So we applied something like this with the office project where we studied like market trends, and you still have the resources for that. But as you can see at the national level, these are like really good ideas, but they're just very broad. So the specific details depend on your local community. And if you want a copy of the National Framework for Physical Planning, I have it over here. I'll just share it to you guys. Copy. I'll change it to editor. There we go. Copy link. And the file should be here. Okay. And then here on the right side, we have like some sort of screenshots of the document. It's just an executive summary. For some reason, the full version is not online. That's just another problem with like Philippine governance. So next, so another sort of document. So this is the physical framework plan. This is the socioeconomic development plan, or just called the development plan. I think I mentioned this earlier, like last week, but just very briefly. So the socioeconomic development plan identifies 16 goals, each with their own, they have like different themes with two versions. There's the medium term, I think that was early last year, and the updated term, the updated version, which just came out earlier this year. So how does the development plan work? It's sort of documented, or the process of creating the development plan starts with each new president. So a president's term in the Philippines is 6 years. The development plan starts or is reviewed at the beginning of the term. Like they review the previous president's development plan, see what they did, and then they create a new version based on the goals identified by the current administration. So this development plan was created at the beginning of Duterte's term. And this is what they ended up with now that he's no longer, he's the former president, and now we have our new president, Marcos Jr. But anyway, these are the different sort of goals here. We have building a high trust society, transforming towards equity and resiliency, increasing potential growth, all very kind of good ideas. The problem is really how do we implement it? For us, let's focus on the architecture-related sort of goals. So here, under responsive, people-centered, technology-enabled, and clean governance ensure, that's over here. Clean governance here. This, let me just highlight it with the here. This is not the only one that is relating to architecture. Let me see color. But this is the one that was the easiest to sort of connect. So this goal here, second on the left side. So we have here all about, it's about transparent and effective institutions, which enable efficient delivery of public services, generate high public trust, which are crucial in achieving a healthy and resilient Philippines. So this is really something that, well, it's not super related to architecture, but this is sort of what's lacking in like development in the Philippines, where transparency is very difficult to come by. New projects aren't really shared with the public, and for the most part, that really creates a lot of confusion, like what's happening in the Philippines. And most of the time, we really have to like follow very closely with the newspapers and the government what's going on. So another sort of like key thing for us architects is the safe, resilient, and sustainable communities built. So this is really where we come in, where architecture and urban planning really helps out with sort of the national goal of like creating resilient and sustainable communities. So we have under this goal, public health goals in the design of human settlements integrated, housing production that incorporates hazard and health standards, and then alternative housing solutions for low income markets. So these are where architects come in because like we're really focused on housing. And then how does housing help out with poverty is that people cannot sort of get themselves out of poverty if they don't have a place to stay, if they don't have like their own homes. It's very it's very difficult to have a job if you don't have a house. To apply for a job, you need to like write down your name, and then the next thing there is where's your address. No employer will hire a homeless person. So housing is very, very important. And we already talked about it earlier in AR 2233, the different sort of requirements for socialized and economic housing, and also just like the more high-end sort of subdivision housing. I think we'll review that probably next meeting. Okay, and the third document, so we have the physical framework plan, we have the development plan, and then now we have the third document that each level should have is the investment program. Now, this was even more difficult to find than the physical and the development plans, investment programs, because this is where the funds come from. And I think Philippine government is very skittish or very kanang quiet about where they get the money, and that's probably why we have this poverty problem today. In general, I tried to search for Philippine investment program. There's nothing there. It's blank or forbidden. So next, I tried to look at the Department of Budget Management, because most of these programs, because it's a government program, it's funded by taxes. And in the Philippines, we have two types of tax: national tax and local taxes. So where does the tax come from, or what is the government taxing? So over here, we have a few tables. So for example, there's a transfer of real property ownership tax, printing and publication tax. It's applicable to provinces, cities, and then apparently the first two are not applicable to municipalities, but applicable to metropolitan municipalities within metropolitan Manila area with two asterisks. Anyway, going back, so national tax includes estate tax, documentary stamp tax, business tax, etc. And then local taxes include franchise tax, basic real property tax, sand and gravel quarry resources tax. So basically large sort of activities and then small activities. And then I'm just going a bit faster because for me, you don't need to know all the taxes. You just need to know that funds come from taxes. Now, a little bit more leaning towards site planning and architecture. So we already know about zoning and comprehensive land use plans. This is the local level sort of physical framework and development plans. And then they have sort of three benefits of using zoning to sort of like manage land use in the Philippines. So number one is to optimize the use of land. Number two is to promote public health and safety. Number three is preserve, the desirable character and real estate values. And then finally, promote rational and orderly growth of the city and municipality. So how do you determine what will be the best use for that land? I think we already went through that earlier. Like similar to your site selection process, you need to look at what's going on in that area. So again, looking at the stakeholders, but this time at a local or community scale. What are the needs of that local community? And then you assign the land uses as appropriate. I mean, like if that area is an agricultural area, you would want to preserve the agricultural land. And if it's missing sort of commercial areas, you add commercial areas, something like that. And then I just want to highlight the different zones in the Philippines. So we have, I think, about 26 zones. So that's forest zone, agricultural zone, agri-industrial zone, municipal water zone, mineral land zone, general residential zone. And under general residential, there's three levels. There's R1, R2, R3. The difference between each level is the density and sort of the scale of the project. Oh, there's also R4 and R5. I missed that. So there are five actually, sorry. And then a special zone called socialized housing zone. and you don't see that a lot in Cebu City. Unfortunately, in Cebu City, the zoning map as of like 2010, I think this is the latest version. There's no current 2020 version of the Cebu City zoning map, as far as I know. Mandawi has it. Lapu-Lapu, I think, has it. So you have to look up in your local areas if your area has a zoning map. So this is a main issue for Cebu City in particular. Like, how do is land use planning actually happening? So it's very kanang gubot at the moment. So if you look at the Cebu City zoning map on here to the right, we only have two levels of residential zoning. So we don't have any zoning for our sort of R3, R4, and R5, and also socialized housing zoning is not existent in Cebu. So the next sort of zoning are the commercial zones. So there's like general zone, so C1, and then C1, C2, and C3, again, according to density and scale of the project. And then we have the industrial zones, 1, 2, and 3. General institutional zones, so these are your government buildings, schools, hospitals, and special institutional zones. And then finally, the last set of zones, you have the parks and recreation zone, cemetery and memorials, buffer or green belt, and then utilities, transportation, and services zone. And then the last of all the zones is the tourism zone. So what quantifies these zones? I'm not going to have you study that, but think about your city, your local area. What does it need? You're the expert if you live in that city. And then for me in Cebu, I think what we really need is a zoning map. I think currently they're in the works, like local governments reaching out to the academe and also like private companies. So hopefully we'll see some movement with that soon. Okay, so next here, you can find the CLUP guidebook online. Just look for like CLUP guidebook Philippines, and you should be able to find it. I'll give you my copy here. I'll put it into the Google Drive. But how does the CLUP sort of divide land use? So there's forest, upland, lowland, coastal, and marine. And coastal and marine, so that's one sort of option, one sort of group there. So the idea is that development or construction should be appropriate to the area. So for example, if in a forest area, you should limit construction because of the slope. If you're in the upland area, you can have some construction, but not super dense because again, the slope. And then the high development area should be in the lowland areas where it's flat, but it should not be it should not be close to the coast or the kanang coastal or marine areas to prevent storm surges, flooding, all the problems we identified last week. So just to for your reference, these are sort of how the CLUP divides development. And then you have the different authorities in charge of those different areas. So in the forest and upland area, you have the DENR. And then in the upland area specifically, you have the ARCDP, or the Agrarian Reform Community Development Plan. And then from lowland to coastal and marine, you have infrastructure planning. You have various, there's no specific government organization for that. But from upland, lowland, coastal, and marine, you have the AFMP, the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Plan. So I have not been able to find that document for Cebu specifically because I don't know where it is. Maybe a quick Google search will help you find it. But anyway, so at the sort of regional and sort of municipal level and also provincial, this is how, what do you call this? Land is viewed. And our main reference for this is the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The regional levels, they don't go into this detail. So if you're doing like your thesis, just refer to a CLUP guidebook and identify which kind of like project do you want to do, or identify what kind of building type is appropriate for, or like the problem you're trying to solve. So how I've been handling like thesis classes, not really thesis classes, but a few thesis students this year. And the main issue is really they have a site, but they can't really pinpoint the main problem that they want to solve. Like architecturally, they can identify that there's low tourism, not enough tourism, or decline in tourism. They can identify that the area is poor. They want to like improve the economic activity in the area, but they couldn't identify the building type. And then once they did, it was really because they had to really look into the specific problems in that area. And then one of them used this sort of the CLUP guidebook because they're trying to do a master plan for Hilutungan. This is a bit south, or the, not really south, but like, let me see. I'll just show you where Hilutungan is. Hilutungan Island in Cordova. Here we go. So it's a bit kanang south of Cebu, southeast of Cebu. And Cordova is over here. And then it's funny that it's part of Cordova when it's really far away. So Hilutungan Highland is here, if you can see my screen. And they're trying to sort of create a master plan for this like community over here. So very kanang low quality housing. And it also reflects that there isn't much economic activity here. Most of the activity is tourism. So you have beach resorts, you have elementary school here, you have restaurant. So the key goal here is to sort of really focus on the housing part and like how do we sort of create sustainable housing in this area. Anyway, so how do you sort of go about creating a CLUP? So number one, you need to organize, getting the endorsement approval of the Sangguniang Bayan. I think that's what SB is. Preparation of a work program, organization, and briefing of planning team. So this is like in any project, you need to organize first, like who are your people who will work on the project. After that, you identify your stakeholders. So who are your stakeholders? Again, it's everyone who's impacted by your project, no matter what your project is. You need to talk to the people who will be impacted by their project so you can create a more comprehensive plan. After that, you set the vision, conduct visioning workshops, like talking to like the local communities, like the people, include them in the workshops. What do they want for their community? Analyze the situation. So we already done that several times. What's going on in your the geography, what's going on with utility access, base map preparation, data gathering, mapping of results, etc., etc. And then once you know what's going on there, then you can set the goals and objectives. Maybe you say, we want sort of better quality housing. So how do you achieve that? Because like, where will the money come from? So you can say that the local people can build it, and then we'll get some subsidies from the municipal government. So something like that. And then eventually you'll end up with preparing the land use plan. And then the last step here is conducting a public hearing. But that's rare. That rarely happens. Even abroad, the public hearings are very few because it's such a logistical nightmare. And some people, some of the citizens themselves are apathetic towards the project. Most likely because they weren't included in the sort of the beginning stages. So it's very important to include the local community at the start or at setting at least. Okay, so who makes up the team of the comprehensive land use plan? You have coordinating boards. That's the development councils, local development councils, planning officers. You have architects and environmental planners, mechanical engineers, several specialists, and support groups. So it doesn't, what do you call this? It's not easy to make a CLUP, and one person cannot do it. It has to be a group of people who are in tune to the needs of the local area. And then you also have these like working groups, that's TWG, looking at social, economic, infrastructure, physical, forest and ancestral domain, if that's relevant, coastal and marine, CCADDR, I don't know what that is, heritage and urbanism. So a lot of people, at least you'll have like a group of like 20 people to create this like CLUP. And that's also not cheap because these are professionals. Maybe some of them may work at a lower rate, but it's really difficult to create these plans because like no one's getting, the government is not giving proper compensation. And then the experts aren't murag, they're not enticed, or they feel like it's out of kanang just love for their community. And then it's very difficult to have that love for your community if you have like unless you're like a saint or something. So it's really difficult to create these kinds of plans. So if your local area has a CLUP, you should be very thankful that it exists, because I don't think there's one for Cebu. There is one for like the smaller communities that are more active and have like people who care about their communities. Anyway, so the closest, as far as I know, Cebu City has to a CLUP is the roadmap study for Metro Cebu. This was made in 2015, and it's still very conceptual. That's why they call it roadmap studies, not even a full study. So it identifies several issues in what we call the Metro Cebu area. That includes the cities and municipalities of Danao, Compostela, Liloan, Consolacion, Mandaue, Lapu-Lapu, Cebu, Cordova, Talisay, Minganilla, Naga, San Fernando, and Carcar. So that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 13 municipalities and cities combined. And the different sort of issues they identified is, number one is septage and sewerage. The big issue for this area, like this Metro Cebu area, is that we don't have an existing sewage plan. Like, we don't know where our pipes are, and that leads to other problems like solid waste management. And then, sort of not really related to the waste management issue, is the traffic congestion. But in a way, our public highways, that's where our utilities go. I think Metro Cebu expanded at such a fast rate that no one was able to document the new highways or the small roads, and no one was able to sort of provide proper septage and sewage facilities. So it's just labay lang diri, labay lang dito. So now we have that kind of problem. And then, of course, with sewage problems, you also have water supply problems. Like we're sort of draining our deep wells, apparently, in Metro Cebu. That's why rainwater harvesting has become a law, because we're running out of water. And then another issue here is population increase, because again, urban areas or like cities are magnets for new population, or people migrate to cities because there's more opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, the Philippines as a whole is becoming more and more urbanized, so expect even more population growth in urbanized areas. And then we have public transportation and terminals, sort of connected to the traffic congestion management. Like, the reason why there's a lot of traffic in areas like Cebu is because there's so many private vehicles and we don't have enough public transportation. And why does like private vehicles cause like a traffic congestion? It's because the private car is very inefficient. In one car, usually in the Philippines, there's only one person in there. So, for example, if you have a population of 900,000, and let's say less than half, even only 40% of that, for example, calculator, 40% of 900,000 times 0.4, that's 360 people. And the size of a car is about, let's say, 2 by 1, or not really 2 by 1, 2 by 2.5, 2 by 3 times 6. That's already like 2 million square meters of highway that they occupy, even if they're only 360,000 people. And that's like just for Cebu City only. Mandaue City has a population of around like, let's say similar, like 800,000, and Lapu-Lapu is around that same percent. And then the key thing here is that I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. It's not even majority of the people in Metro Cebu that own cars, but they're using majority of the space. So there's that inequality there. And then, sort of going on to the next issues here: informal settlers, road, bridges, and transport infrastructure, saltwater intrusion connected to the sort of draining of like water supply. Economic development is always an issue in like everywhere in the Philippines. Drainage kind of connected to the septage and sewerage problem. Dumping and sanitary landfill connected to the solid waste management problem. So, very quickly, I'd like you guys to check out the video on the Metro Cebu roadmap. So the link is here. It's a short version. It's only 7 minutes. I'd like you all to watch it and then come back. So I'll just stop presenting for now. Please watch the video, and I'll stop recording here, and I'll start when you come back again. Maybe I'll just like keep it going for the sake of those who don't have access to YouTube for some reason. So you can watch on your own, or you can watch over here. I'll just let this play.
Metro Cebu is the second largest metropolis of the Philippines, which now encompasses 13 local government units. In 2010, Its population was about 2.5 million. However, projection of the roadmap study sees more than 5 million in 2050. The natural features of Metro Cebu reveal high hazard risks for landslide and flooding. Only 24% is suitable for urban development free from natural hazards. Like any fast-growing urban area, Metro Cebu is beset with its share of development issues, such as wastewater and solid waste management, flooding and insufficient water supply, and heavy traffic. To respond effectively to these challenges, the Metro Cebu Development and Coordinating Board, MCDCB, in coordination with JICA, embarked on the formulation of a sustainable urban development vision for Metro Cebu 2050. It came up with development strategies of competitiveness, livability, mobility, and most importantly, the metropolitan management to realize the Mega Cebu Vision 2050. This study crafted the following sub-roadmaps addressing 7 critical issues. Present urbanization trend of the metropolis is concentrated in the already densely populated core urban areas. This results in daily traffic congestion and hampers economic and social activities. The development pattern of a monocentric growth should be refashioned to a polycentric to accommodate 5 million people in 2050. An urban cluster system will be adopted to define urban function. The cities of Danao and Naga could be developed as growth poles next to the core areas. Well-appointed green buffer areas will ensure environmental safety nets for the metropolis. As such, a future spatial plan for the whole Metro Cebu was formulated in this roadmap study in coordination with the 13 LGUs of Metro Cebu. Due to limited road space and network, average vehicle speed in the urban area remained very low. Additional roads are proposed to provide alternate routes for public and private transport. Bottleneck mitigation measures, such as modification of intersections, grade separation, road widening, and introduction of area traffic control will be conducted. Likewise, the introduction of a mass transit system network is proposed in order to substantially improve mobility. This starts with the introduction of an automated guideway transit, AGT, airport line to connect Mactan Island and Cebu Island by early 2020s. Additionally, mass rapid transit, MRT lines, with a combined length of 97 kilometers and approximately 50 stations connecting all the cities and municipalities of Metro Cebu, will be operational in phases, starting from 2030 to 2050. Metro Cebu will enjoy a steady economic growth, even in the long term. People's affluence levels, in terms of per capita GRDP, is projected to grow to more than $20,000 in 2050. Annual tourist arrivals breached the 2.5 million mark in 2013 and will continue to increase over the years. The Mega Cebu Investment Board will be established to promote 4 priority sectors. Special attention will be paid for regional branding as well as resources in different economic sectors. One of the challenging issues in Metro Cebu is the inadequacy and poor quality of its water supply. The current water supply will be unable to meet future demand of the metropolis. The over-extraction of underground water, a main water source for Cebu, already causes saltwater intrusion into the aquifer, encroaching up to inland from Cebu City shore. Due to expanding demand and supply gap, construction of plural dams are essential, requiring urgent consensus building. There are many flood-prone areas in Metro Cebu. An enormous amount of garbage and inappropriate structures along riverbanks obstruct the flow of natural and man-made waterways. To analyze the problem thoroughly, a comprehensive study for Metro Cebu Integrated Flood and Drainage System Master Plan will be formulated, along with clearing of rivers and constructing small-scale rainwater storage facilities. Surprisingly, Metro Cebu does not have a proper public wastewater management system. Fecal coliform that exceeds acceptable standards was detected at the rivers and sea. Without endangering human health or the natural environment, human and industrial wastes need to be disposed properly. Construction of a septic treatment plant by cluster is a matter of the greatest urgency. Unorganized dump sites are seen in Metro Cebu. A comprehensive solid waste management master plan for Metro Cebu will be required to formulate strategic policy and plan. Moreover, the waste reduction and recovery program needs strict adherence and follow-through. The South Road property, SRP, is a 300-hectare reclamation area. The development concept of SRP is to become an IT-concentrated industry zone for Metro Cebu, but predominantly holds residential and commercial areas. A unified management system of energy supply and demand in SRP is promoted to realize a smart SRP. To implement the metropolis-wide projects outlined by these roadmaps, an institutional body to handle metropolitan affairs is necessary. That body will consist of not only LGUs, but also the private sector and civil society organizations, referred to as the Metro Cebu model. As a first step for institutional development process, MCDCB will be strengthened to coordinate several types of feasibility studies, arrange project finance, and enhance planning capacity. This institutional body will be developed with enhanced governance function. Metro Cebu roadmap consists of 7 sub-roadmaps. Based on implementation perspective, 14 anchor programs are selected as high-priority roadmap projects. With these programs, Metro Cebu will take their first step toward Mega Cebu Vision 2050. We welcome all our valuable partners to realize these roadmaps. Together, let us make big waves for the Mega Cebu Vision 2050. Mega Cebu, making waves.
Okay. Sige. So, sort of just a quick recap here. Let's look at those projects again. Investment promotion, urban greening, operationalization of Mega Cebu Spatial Plan, urban fringe highway network, Mactanic development, mass transit development, gateway development, road traffic management, surface water resource development, urban septage and sewage services, comprehensive flood control, metropolitan solid waste management, advanced energy management, institutional building of metropolitan governance. So this is more like high-level projects, not really kind of super related to architecture, where architecture can get in. For example, if you're going to be practicing in Cebu, or if you want to have a thesis in Cebu, it's really here. Urban septage and service. There's not so much, apparently housing is not a main goal in Metro Cebu. I think Metro Cebu is fortunate in that aspect. So it's really more about our kanang waste management. Because as we saw earlier, let me go back. Why waste management and water supply are very closely linked. And let me go back here. Okay.
Future demand of the metropolis.
So current water supply, as this was made in 2013, is about 200,000 cubic meters per day. We're now in 2020. Expected water supply will be about 350 or 360 cubic meters per day. But there, here in gray is the actual sort of supply, and this is in red is the actual demand. So let me just open up there. Okay, so number one, we're lacking water because there's so many people in Cebu City. So this is the actual here, the estimated water that we will have. And then in blue is the actual sort of water demand. So this is demand in blue. I'll just put that D. And then in red, here is the supply. So I'll just put that S. So we have a gap of 400 cubic meters per day. So where do we get that water? And we're running out of water. And then the issue there is that because we're running out of water, it causes saltwater intrusion. The way sort of deep wells work is that we get fresh water underground, but if we keep sort of using up water at the rate that we are, because there's so many people in Metro Cebu, salt water or seawater will sort of seep into the freshwater aquifers, or the freshwater, like the underground freshwater. So there's an effect called like the cone of ascension. So seawater will seep in to our kanang drinking water. So their solution is to provide dams. This could also be an architectural solution where you can design the dam or design around the dam to like make it like a tourist spot maybe. And then again, connected to water is that because our sewage system is very poor, and then we also have a waste management problem, the existing sewer system is clogged by trash, as you can see here. And this could also be a architectural problem, or there's a possibility to have an architectural solution by creating such septage treatment plants and also material recovery facility plants. So over here, so basically plants or kanang industrial uses or buildings that manage waste. So that could be a very kanang timely or appropriate thesis objective. For more information on this, what time is it? It's already 12:20. You can just Google or go to this channel. Actually, I'll subscribe to that. They have a longer version of the video. They also post updates. Let's see. This is mostly kanang from the JICA company. Let's see. They have other projects, not just in the Philippines. So you see they're like Africa, mostly Africa I'm seeing here. So you can check these out. I'll just search for the Metro Cebu video here. Metro Cebu roadmap. There's also the Mega Cebu page over here. Last video was 3 years ago. So this is a main problem with the Philippines. Like we create very good like startup ideas, but follow through is very difficult. Here, this is I think the longer version, 12 minutes, and this is an explainer video which is 6 minutes. I think this one will be more appropriate to share. So I'll just share both. Okay, so you got that, and then you got. Let me go back. You got JICA over here. Okay, moving on. Hopefully, if the audio quality wasn't good or the video quality wasn't good, you could watch it on your own. And then this is the document. I'll also share this with you. So they have study scope, overview of the study area, urban infrastructure, and urban structure and infrastructure. So what did they see when they studied Cebu? Then business investments. This is the economic side. And then results of housing survey. So this is like the sociological side. And then part 2 is where they put in the framework or their suggested solutions. Now, the suggested solutions also include a study of the previous city plan for Metro Cebu. This was the Metro Cebu 2000 structure plan. The Metro Cebu, what they call this? Land use and transportation, I forgot, land use but it was called the Maklats. I forgot what the S is for. It was Metro Cebu land use, transport, something. So the components that were implemented, Mandawi City Reclamation Project, South Reclamation Project, new roads built, construction of second bridge, widening and improving of arterial roads, construction of South Bus Terminal, installation of modern traffic signal system. This was more on the Mandawi side and Apulapu side. Implementation of some traffic management measures and development of the Mactan tourism area. What was not implemented in the Maklats plan was the creation of the Metro Cebu Development Authority, which I think exists now. Construction of new roads, such as circumferential road from AS Fortuna to South Road, extension of H. Cortez to Abellana, North Ring Road from Talamban to Liluan. So if you're familiar with those roads, there would have been implemented. I think they're working on it now. And then improvement and widening of existing roads. So this is why I'm not super, what they call this. I don't agree that widening roads will solve the problem, but it will definitely help. And from an architectural perspective, this is why we need to strictly follow setbacks, because you really don't know if your building or your site will be kanang highlighted as a road widening project. And over here are the four visions. So this is how I would like you to present your kanang um, basically site selection criteria. You have like main strategies or main visions. And also in design, if you lay it out like this, it's much more easier to follow. The problem with the roadmap plan is like the visions kind of like get really messy here. How does it connect to the seven roadmaps? Anyway, they're all, it looks like they're all interconnected. So city planning, again, similar to national and regional planning, is very complicated. So competitiveness, what does competitiveness refer to? It means like metropolitan enhancement, urban transport and highway network. You have your smart SRP development, metropolitan governance, etc. So the conclusions of this study, they say that monocentric or kanang super dense inhabited urban society in 2050. Here, let me zoom in. Just make this bigger, like this. I'll put this back. Okay. So you see here, the first one, this is without interventions, meaning Cebu City, Mandaue, Talisay, Lapu-Lapu will become densely inhabited. So much so that the traffic congestion will be like unbearable, etc. So their idea is a polycentric and equitably or fairly developed urban society. So the first one, without any interventions, all of the development will happen in Cebu City, Mandaue, Lapu-Lapu, and maybe parts of Talisay and Consolacion, meaning the other areas of the province you won't have access to resources, and then they will have to travel all the way to the city, which just makes it even more kind of congested and dirty. So the way to go apparently is to spread out a bit the development, polycentric, meaning multiple centers. So I'll just quickly read here. Without interventions, we will experience a monocentric and densely inhabited urban area. This means the present urbanization pattern will continue. Urban development will be concentrated in Cebu City, Mandaue City, Lapu-Lapu City. Urban sprawl will encompass the peripheral LGUs. Traffic congestion will worsen and eventually hamper economic and social activities, discouraging spacious suburban development. So the solution is a polycentric and equitably developed urban area. So new workplaces and residential areas will be distributed throughout Metro Cebu. Hillside development will be constrained and favorable urban amenity will be created so as to prevent urban disasters such as landslides and floods, etc., etc. Okay, we go back here. So how do they plan to implement this sort of 2050 vision? So you have the project management team and the financing team. So the project management team is headed by the Metro Cebu Development Coordination Board, or the MCDCB, who's on that board, a group of politicians, professionals, some of our academe, working together with the Regional Development Council, who is also working with the National Economic Development Authority, and they're the ones who look for donors, usually sponsors from abroad, and they are sort of the donors send their money to the Department of Finance, and they'll provide a loan, and the loan will go to the private-public partnership project fund. So an organization will, the DOF will create that fund, and it will go to the kind of private investors, which will go to the kind of PMOs, or the project managers for Project 1, Project 2, 3, and 4, which will be overseen by the MCDCB. So the Metro Cebu Development Coordination Board creates the projects, they propose it to the RDC and NEDA, and also the aligned agencies like DPWH and DOTC. Once it's approved, they get the budget from the Department of Finances. The Department of Finances releases the project fund, and then it goes back to the different projects. So that's basically it. And it's simple here on this diagram, but the RDC is like composed of several people and offices. NEDA is composed of several people and offices. A lot of meetings need to occur. A lot of documents need to be signed before the sort of loan is processed, and then the fund also needs to be approved, and then it finally goes back to the PMO. So there's a lot of lead time between the project being proposed, approved, the fund getting sort of released, and then actually doing the project, executing the project. That's why you see a lot of kanang, I guess, honestly, substandard projects. And this is where architects can help, because architects know about construction. By the end of your 5 years training and also your apprenticeship, you'll be familiar with the construction process more closely. And then you'll be more familiar with also the budgeting process, like estimates, who handles the money. For example, in building a house, you need to know how much concrete costs. And to find out how much concrete you need to like draw the model, measure how tall your walls are, your columns, etc. And then that will go into like a volume of concrete. Also, that translates to a volume for your rebar, your different materials, basically. So that's why architectural plans need to be very specific and very clear, because that will be the document which will be used to estimate the cost of your building. And then without a clear architectural plan, you can't get the right materials, and then you'll never build a proper building. Anyway, so implementation and evaluation. So we some of the bigger projects in Cebu have not yet been approved, or it's still in the concept planning stage. But elsewhere in the Philippines, we have Iloilo, who's I think leading in like green sort of and sustainable development with their National Bike Day, Bike Lane Awards. Iloilo is like turning out to be one of the better designed or better planned cities in the Philippines. You have their boardwalk over here. You see a lot of kind of bicycle lanes, etc. And then because in Cebu we're still at the concept stage, I would like to recommend these like YouTube channels to you, because like there's everything's on YouTube these days. They're still like updating, creating more new data. So I think for me the best channel for kind of urban development is City Beautiful, videos about cities and city planning. They also have like basically like their friends, not just bikes, and other sort of urban development channels. For architecture, I really recommend architecture with Stuart Hicks. And also Netflix, you have several documentaries there. Check out Abstract. It's a series of kind of documentaries, not really documentaries, but kind of like talking about different aspects of design. So you have here season 2 talks about bioarchitecture. You have Cass Holman for design for play. You have digital product design. I think those are the closest to architecture. And of course, you have resources like Phil Atlas, City Dev. We can see like population data as update. I think the latest version is like 2015. So if you ever need to look at population data, how it affects, I can show you the website. City Dev is here. Let me show you. City population, or citypopulation.de. And then you just go to their website here. They have not only data for the Philippines, but all over the world. So let's say I want to go to Asia. Let's say Philippines, LMNOP. Let's look at, let's say, regions and urban places. Oh, this is Luzon. So this is Luzon. You see population of 50 million above. It's here concentrated in. You can also click this button here, unlock map, so you can like increase the size. So there's a legend here on the left side. So most of the population is here. NCR, you have Caloocan, Quezon, Manila, followed by Pasig, Makati, and Taguig. So the squares are the dense, the high population areas, and the circles are lesser population, 400,000, etc. And then another cool feature here are the city and barangay maps. So I'm going to go to Cebu. Cebu. And then I think I showed you this before. You just have buttons here. You have buttons for population. The larger the circle, the larger the population. You see Guadalupe at 70,000, and the least is maybe somewhere here, Tagbao at 1,700. But even if you go closer, there's something smaller. Barangay Central, aka Barangay Santo Niño, has a population of 780 people. And then I think that's the least populated city. Oh, there's another one here, Kalubihan in the Colon area, 663 people. So where is the population in Cebu City? It's here in the inland area. Not yet the mountainous area, but the inland area was like still kind of flat. And then you have population density. So purple is like the most dense, and then yellow is like the least dense. So you see Guadalupe at 9,500 people per square kilometer, and then Suba Poblacion at 100,000 people per square kilometer. So this is very kind of obvious. Now these are the sort of the slum areas. If you go to Suba Poblacion in Cebu, I'll just do Google Maps. You can already imagine the type of housing in this area. There it is. The boundary in Google Maps is just an estimate. It's not the actual sort of boundary. So this is a density of 100,000 people. If you go down to Street View, this is the quality of their housing. It's not terrible, it's still very livable, but like definitely can be improved. You see the wirings are like the electrical wires are just like touching the houses already, no proper setbacks. It's also a bit sorry about that guy. Here, there's also a lot of litter. Sewage line, the drainage is not very clear. There's no sort of drainage on the sidewalks. There's no sidewalks. And you see a lot of puddling and also like trash everywhere. So this is really kind of probably one of the target areas for like socialized housing or improved housing. And yeah, I think this is new. Oh, this is like a public market over here. I'm not super familiar with this area. So like that. So this is, I'll just send you a link to this and you can sort of look if your area is like available. Let me just go back. Philippines. So we have different barangays here. Angeles, Iloilo, different like cities, I mean. And then you have sort of general maps for Luzon, Mindanao, and Visayas. So if you click on provinces and municipal division, they have like a map for here. So you can see the different cities. You can see which one is the most dense. So Mandaue probably is the most dense in the central Visayas, just looking at color-wise. It's 11,000 people per square kilometer. The next dense is probably over here, Iloilo, at 6,000. Let's see. I know the most dense is really, yeah, Cebu province with Talisa at 6,000 people per square kilometer, Mandaue at 11,000, Lapu-Lapu at 7,000, and probably the next is here, Iloilo at 6,000. You can actually arrange it by density, I think. There should be a thing here. I know it doesn't show. I just have to like look at the colors. I think you can see population density in Wikipedia. And then you can also check, what's this? Population change. So you see in green and blue, that's positive change. So for example, here in, oh no, blue is negative and then yellow is positive, sorry. So for example, here in Balamban, there's a change of 1.9% or increase in population of 1.9%. Highest change is here. Red is like higher change. Luan has an increase of 5.5% in their population, so on and so forth. And then you have here gender, the division of males and females, population of elderly, people age 65 plus, and that's basically it. And you also have, what's this? Change in level, not so much. And this is kind of population. So Cebu province has 5 million people. It's 2022. The estimate in the video is 5 million people by 2050. We're already like 5 million people and it's still 2022. So there's so many people. We're rapidly growing. That's why we need better planning. Anyway, let's continue to the final parts of the slide. Oh, that is the end of the slide. And then other sort of groups that you want to look into, if you're interested in planning and regional development, the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners, they hold like public webinars every so often, like maybe every 2 months. You have sort of, we'll discuss tactical urbanism in urban design. This is for AR 3233 next sem. You have development and planning offices. Some of them have Facebook pages. So you see here in Iloilo, they have it. and also other sort of independent kanang this is more urban design, seating for socializing. So it's more, these are on the bottom urban design sort of pages, and on the top are more urban planning pages. Anyway, so that's it for governance and demographics for or the socioeconomic factors for site and urban planning. So really, we're looking at big picture stuff. And how do you get the details is you really have to look at your local area, similar to what you're doing in your current project now. So with that, I'll stop the recording here. I'll look into your kanang projects again, and I'll make it into another video.